Okay, this next identification is of Annie Oakley, and from a historiography position, which we've talked about uh, recently, this is basically a biographical type of history. Okay, so and Annie Oakley was also a famous figure in the Old West, or what you might call the Wild West. And she was born in 1860 through 1926. She was born in Ohio of English descent. Her father died when she was 6. Um, so they lived in Ohio, but after her father died, they were already poor, and then when the father died, they fell into really deep poverty. She lived as a poor child. She didn't attend school, and basically they had to work hard to survive and do anything they could. And so she hunted as a young teen for food, which she learned many skills doing that. Her family lived off the land, and hunting to survive, to put food on the table and in their mouths. She became an expert shooter. So when she grew up, she joined a traveling show, and this became her career, and she became a performer as an expert target, a gun target shooter. Okay, so here she is as a young lady, and so she became an expert shooter by basically to survive. But now, as an adult, she turned it as a way to make a living, and she worked as a gun target shooter in shows. And the traveling people were looking for a new form of entertainment in the late 1800s, and people in the East were fascinated by the people who went out west. The people in the East living more in urban city areas like in New York or Chicago or towns like Nashville, um, were excited to see any kind of Wild West show because it was kind of a legendary thing. People who lived in the West, so when these shows came to town, they were packed. People paid their nickel, and they brought their children, and they saw these shows. And so Annie Oakley became probably the most famous of the Wild West show performers. You see, and there she is with a rifle. They would travel from town to town. Sometimes they would set up a tent and charge money. And there were other people in the show too. She would be a shooter. There would be men as expert shooters, cowboys. There were some Indians that joined the show too, who would have do riding shows. So it was, brought a lot of people together, and it was a very positive development. And so Annie Oakley just became more and more famous. Here she's doing her tricks, shooting at targets from with a mirror, and the people will be going, oh, and the children too. The young ladies were really fascinated and inspired by Annie Oakley. There's like an advertisement, the Buffalo Bill Wild West show, and see Annie Oakley this is a real advertisement from the era. You hear this, she's right in the center of the advertising poster, so that just shows you that she was like the star of the show, as well as Buffalo Bill was the leader of the show too. So there's like the ticket office. Um, so the Buffalo Bill ticket office, and Annie Oakley would perform these shows in many cities across the West, the East, and even some in the South. It was very popular. So here we see There's a small sign, Buffalo Bills Wild West with Annie Oakley in town. So this is also part of intellectual history, like we're talking about different kinds of history. Like this is part of entertainment history also, and the most of, I think, the West, um, the Old West history. Okay, so she aged, but stayed with this, and I think she did a play called Western Girl, and then she got older, and she seems to be happy here, and um, yeah, the play was called Western Girl. Um, so so finally, she got ill, being quite a bit older, and she had, I think, a pretty good life. She was married. She got married to another marksman named Frank Butler, but in the end, she passed away of anemia in 1926. But she was a great Annie Oakley. She was an inspiration to lots of young ladies and excellent young women. And in that way, she didn't set out to be part of the women's movement, but by setting an example, and by doing this, she was very inspiring to young ladies. She was inspiring to all people. So that's the story of Annie Oakley.